Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a special live stream from Firaxis Games. My name is Pete Murray, and I'm joined today by Will Miller and David McDonough, the code lead designers of Sid Meier's Civilization Beyond Earth Rising Tide. Thank you guys for coming on today.
Our pleasure.
So, big announcement today. We are announcing Rising Tide. And what is Beyond Earth Rising Tide?
Well, Pete, we're really excited about Beyond Earth Rising Tide because it's a Firaxis expansion in the truest sense. So in addition to adding a ton of new content to the game, to the systems that we introduced in Beyond Earth, we're also adding some new features that we think really changes how the game plays. As the title suggests, one of the big features we're adding is the ability to play on the water. Water gameplay is a huge focus for Rising Tide. And this includes settling on the water, a slew of new aquatic units, new aquatic aliens, really differentiated gameplay on the water. So for the first time, the entire map becomes exploitable terrain, strategic terrain. We've also overhauled the diplomacy system. We've taken the old diplomacy system out, put a brand new diplomacy system in. This has implications for many parts of the game. The AI, how your personality progresses over the course of the game, lots of changes related to diplomacy in Rising Tide. We've also added new biomes, 2 new biomes and 4 new leaders, along with an expanded quest catalog, artifacts, and lots of balancing changes and AI improvements.
Okay. That's there's a lot there, and we're going to kind of unpack some of this a little bit. So you're talking about making some changes to the game itself. Will some of that percolate back to Beyond Earth itself?
Yes, absolutely. So whenever we make a big move like this with an expansion, there inevitably is some updates and some improvements that we can make to the core game. Not all of it. A lot of it just cannot be translated back.
Okay.
But everything that we have done that can be part of the core experience and that we think belongs there will be put there as soon as the expansion comes out. So there's going to be a sizable patch for base BE as well.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the water gameplay, because that's a piece that's easy to talk about and fun to show off and things like that. So you've talked about a lot of things that you're going to be able to do on the oceans and Beyond Earth now. So settle cities.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Naval units, new kinds of ones.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Bring back the submarine, for one thing.
All right, so we were actually going to put up an image, so we're looking at right now. There's a lot going on there. Can we? There's a city shooting at stuff, which cities tend to do. Looks like you got a couple new aliens on there, and then a bunch of boats in kind of like the 7 o'clock position there. That's one of the new surface combat units.
Yeah, that's the patrol boat. It's a new light squad-based naval melee, similar to your Marine on land. It'll be sort of your frontline shock troop, your basic naval unit.
Okay, and that then I assume works with gunboats in an interesting way. The gunboats become ranged.
Well, they were always
okay.
ranged, but they take on more of a cavalry, artillery role, and then of course there's your carriers and your submarines.
I think it's important to kind of step back a little bit and talk about what our approach to water gameplay was and where it fits in the Beyond Earth experience. We didn't want this to be an afterthought. We wanted this to be a core part of the Beyond Earth experience, and we also didn't want water to be just blue tiles that you settled on. So one of the first orders of business was to challenge our art team to come up with a way to visualize the things that are going on underwater. This screenshot is very illustrative of this. There's lots of new resources, new terrain that you have to deal with. So there's a lot of information we needed to convey about what's going on under the surface. So that was our first big challenge.
Cool.
And then there are some mechanical differences between how you play on land and how you play on water that also further differentiates the gameplay there, but it's important to note that it stands on equal footing with terrestrial gameplay. So you can start in the water, you can settle in the water very early, you can start on land still, of course, and you can have a civilization that spans land and water, or just land or just water, and those are perfectly valid ways to play.
Okay. All right, well, let's step away from the water gameplay for a second and talk a little bit about diplomacy. So you said you've torn out the diplomatic system and you're putting a new diplomacy kind of engine system into it.
That's right.
That's going to change a lot of things. What does that do in terms of how people are going to be interacting with other factions?
Well, this is still something that's very much in the works right now. We're working very hard on this feature right now, so I'm not going to get into real specific detail, but I can kind of describe this from a philosophical level, from an approach level. To say we took out Beyond Earth diplomacy is to say we took out Civ 5's diplomacy. One of the things that we learned from releasing Beyond Earth is that the Civ 5 diplomacy just did not work in that game. It relied very heavily on these characters from history that a player brings their own knowledge of into the game, and we needed a better platform to kind of show off our characters' personalities because they're invented from whole cloth.
Okay.
So the very first goal for the new diplomacy system was personality.
Okay.
How do we build the personality as a part of the game? How does the personality progress? How does that personality drive gameplay? So we've made a game out of building the personality. The AI plays this game, the player plays this game, and how you negotiate and how you evolve your personality over the course of the game depends, or gives you lots of buffs and special abilities and things like that. It specializes your Civ.
Okay.
So that was the first part. The second part was that the output of Civ 5 diplomacy was mainly trading resources. So you could trade resources with other Civs, and you could go to war and make peace, and the things in between, the steps in between.
Right.
And that was about it. And we thought that that was sort of a missed opportunity. We wanted to make diplomacy more important to many more parts of the game than it currently is.
Okay.
And to make it a way that you can solve problems in the game. So if you have a deficit in your Civ and you want to solve that problem, now you can do it in the diplomacy system by wheeling and dealing, by exchanging power with other Civs.
Okay.
So that was another important pillar of this system. But it's much more of a game, I would say. We've taken a lot of the core inner workings of how the AI is handling things, how the player's handling things, and put them up front so that there's more transparency and there's more opportunity for play.
Okay, that sounds cool. We've got some new leaders, so there's going to be, like most Civ expansion packs, this has some new people in it. And one of the ones you guys have talked about are Alpha Law.
Yeah, so all 4 of the new factions we had a really great time designing because they're really designed to sort of fit with and at the same time stand against the core 8.
Okay.
So we took an angle of these people who are coming into the seeding, into sending colony ships from a different perspective, from one that's probably harder, more treacherous perhaps, more extreme. So they're going to be disruptive elements. They're going to land on the planet's surface and not necessarily have the same perspectives, the same agendas, maybe not even all of the same rules. So that's we like that because it's another interpretation of the title of the expansion, Rising Tide, that these characters represent a sort of rising stakes, a sort of increased power, increased danger on the surface of the planet. So Alpha Law has a really interesting backstory. In a little bit when we described the backstory of the game, we described the Middle East as being a region that suffers an awful lot. Ecological catastrophe, depopulation, many, many bad things. And we don't really say much about what happens to the people who live there, except that many of them leave. But Alpha Law represents the people who didn't leave, the people who stayed, and who fought through the disasters and who reclaimed their homeland. And so when they're ready to send ships into space, they're doing so after having already gone through this incredibly punishing process. They've got an awful lot of grit and determination. And that's expressed by one of the key signature ideas in their faction, which is that the colony ships that they send don't have cryogenics.
All right.
They're generation ships, which is a cool sci-fi concept. Meaning a ship.
Yeah.
So multiple generations living and dying in space while the ship is en route. And if that's cool in a sci-fi sort of empirically, but if you think about it, what it means in a game of Beyond Earth, it means that when they land on the planet, the people who are landing there have never seen a planet, any planet.
Yeah.
They've never seen Earth.
Yeah.
They don't have any idea how to live in any environment except for space, except how they've been trained or the legends that have been told to them by their forebears. So even just that alone, you could imagine how Alpha Law is going to have a different spin on what to do on the planet and why they're there.
Do they think the llama is a mythical animal?
They may. Yeah. You're the 5
mythical
creatures of
Earth.
rape from Ganesh Edman. Absolutely. So they, assuming that they had a copy of that text on board, but
do you want to make a canonical decision on that now? I mean,
no. Actually, I'll always try to avoid making canonical decisions until we have to. It's more fun for everyone.
Okay.
So their leader, Arshia Kishk, is who you're looking at here. She's one of our youngest leaders and a really interesting character. And so Alpha Law and the 3 other counterparts from the expansion set are really interesting. We're very excited to show them off.
And we'll talk about them more as we go along. And one of the other new features you guys have are additional biomes as well too. And we've got a cool example of a biome to show off for you. This is you're going to be showing off the primordial biome, and this is kind of cool because this is a lot different than either fungal or arid in a real sense. This is this is a younger world. This is a really kind of a volcanic planet.
Yeah, when we came up with this one, we had to keep reminding ourselves over and over and over again that this is not Volcano World; it's Young World. And
Okay.
that comes with a lot of interesting connotations, right? It's not. It's like the Genesis planet. And that's kind of what it appears in my head as. It's a very tumultuous, evolving place, very dangerous place.
Very primitive. maybe.
Very primitive and very beautiful as well.
There are things on this shot that I like that the artists were able to work in. So these, if we look down in the lower left corner, we see these kind of like folded landscapes, like the Deccan Traps in India. That's very kind of an indicative volcanic landscape. The double crater kind of environment. That's very cool. But you've made some gameplay changes for the biomes as well too.
Yes. So in Beyond Earth base game, the biomes didn't come with any gameplay differences. They were aesthetic.
Right.
And what we wanted to do was to change slightly how the game plays per biome, so that the selection of the biome is actually a very important decision that you would make at the beginning of the game. And again, we're not going to go into too much detail about exactly how this works, but it will have some impact on your game, not just aesthetically.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then we've got one last thing that we're going to talk about, which is the affinity system. And you've made some changes to that. And I think affinities was one of the ideas that people could kind of gravitate to and understand pretty readily on Beyond Earth. And now you've changed it up, and now you're introducing the idea of hybrid affinities. Mm-hmm. So these represent what? Kind of the intersections of these major affinities. So if you're overlap of a supremacy and a harmony faction, if you're heading hybridized that way, it means you totally reject the purity path.
Well, not exactly.
Away with the old human form.
Yeah, I mean, not exactly. They do represent ideas that come from the two sort of adjacent affinities. But actually, when we designed them, we were really excited to make sure that they were independent interpretations. One of the best things about the affinity system, I think, is that it's made out of sort of digestible parts that kind of make sense. Like, how do we survive? How do we prevent disease? How do we handle extreme environments or hostile life and so on? And the affinities represent different answers to that problem. And the hybrids represent even more different answers to that problem, that borrow some of the sort of ideas of their, like I said, of their neighboring pure affinities, but also form their own answer, their sort of independent identities, so that we're careful to say that the hybrids are not just averages. They're not just the in-between place, but they're a distinct path that draws on strengths that you would find on either side.
Are there any of those that you find particularly intriguing as philosophical approaches? I mean, they all sound very interesting, but...
Yeah, well, actually, I really like the supremacy purity crossover. I mean, not just because the artists have done a fabulous job rendering it. Mm-hmm. Wait till you see them. But, you know, the supremacy is about like replacing our bodies with machines and sort of making ourselves
agnostic
resilient
to the planet. Yeah.
And purity is about preserving humanity as it is, sort of. And so, where would you find the middle ground? Either stay as we are or reject it completely. And the answer in this hybrid is kind of, well, we still want to preserve who we are, and we're going to do it by effectively enslaving machines. So like it's a society built on like robots as servants and as like support devices and as like personal adjutants and everything from like personal drones to like combat platforms that like utterly support and rejuvenate the humans on board. So it's both fused together, a world that's very rigidly classist of like the humans above and then the servitor AI below.
I like that world.
Yeah, so
seems like a good world.
Yeah, and you can imagine how that would be reflected in like the Civ's unique abilities, in their society and culture, but especially also in their military units. So that's one of the best expressions of the hybrid affinities in Beyond Earth Rising Tide are the unique units.
Will, do you have a favorite hybrid?
You know, they're all pretty evocative, I think. My favorite part of the
I'm making you pick one. Yeah.
Well, my favorite part of the new hybrid affinity system is it's more mechanical.
Okay.
Okay. So, in Beyond Earth, the game sort of funneled you into one of the three affinities, and it was very hard to multi-class. And if you try to do, you can. Like I've seen these wonderful these screenshots on Twitter or whatever, people that have all three of the huge unique units for the three affinities. Yeah. You can do it. It's just very hard. Now, hybrid playstyle is totally acceptable, and the game will reinforce that. So you can multi-class if you want to. So it's an exciting new system. It adds a ton of new units to the game, as Dave said, new unique units, but also the top tier of all of the base classes have hybrid manifestations as well.
I think most of them.
Most of them, yeah.
Okay.
So it's huge. It's a lot of new content. It really fills that system out and is super exciting.
All right. So that is a quick look at the things that are going to be in Beyond Earth Rising Tide, which we just announced today. So thank you guys for coming in and talking to me, and by extension talking to everybody on the internet that exists out there. So thanks very much for coming out. If you are interested in more information on Beyond Earth Rising Tide, there's a lot of stuff coming out today. We'll have additional coverage in the weeks to come up through launch. We'll be announcing dates soon. And hopefully at some point we'll start streaming it here on our Firaxis Twitch channel. Thanks very much for watching today. I hope you guys enjoyed this stream, and have a good one.